Hello and welcome to Lightways on Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And my guest today is Richard Swatton. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Anna.
The first thing is we are going to be taking part in a seminar on love and relationships with the Astrology Lodge on the 9th of April.
Yes.
And I thought, given that your talk is about Venus, it might be nice to start I'm doing 3 weeks of looking at relationships on Lightways.
Right.
So I thought it would be a good place to start, Venus, and here you are.
Right. Well, I'm going to be covering some of the basics. I generally teach the basics, but then I think once we've got them, then you can extend and become a bit more complex about your interpretations.
Indeed.
I was at the Center for Psychological Astrology when it first opened, around about 84. I studied with that, and I still, although there are many things that you can talk about, many levels, if you like, I tend to talk about the psychological elements, if you like, of the Venus position. And it's a good place to start is with the mythology, of course. I'm not going to wax on lyrical about it. Anybody can read about Aphrodite and Venus and Ishtar and all of those connected goddesses of love. But it's important to realize that the planetary positions are alive in us. I think it's a good idea to at least imagine that these have a living force, as if we animate the planets with our imagination like we do. And, as I say, the first port of call is to amplify it. I mean, do you know your mythology? Do you know who Venus was? What kind of character she was, what she wants, how she is? I think it's a good place to start.
It is a good place to start. I think when we're looking at interpreting anything in a chart, you have to ask the question, who is this character?
Yeah.
And what does this character tell us about ourselves? And then looking at the position in the chart specifically, what does it tell us about this particular person?
Yeah.
So when you're working with Venus, what are you looking for? What are you looking at?
Well, it's about context, you see. Sometimes people come to us, don't they? And they say, well, I want to look at relationships. And often they're projecting their Venus out onto some other person and a situation in which they're looking for either sexual or erotic love or some kind of romantic ideal in order to fulfill their lives. And I think first and foremost, Venus should be seen as the planet of erotic love. And what that generally means is that it's there's the procreative instinct, the sexual instinct, which is basically procreative. But in human beings, it's much more than that, because we project our imagination onto what we're doing or what we want to feel like. I think Plato called it the instinct supported by beauty. You see, because we also have a kind of aesthetic quality to us, which defines us as individuals. And so what Venus is part of the pantheon of the 7 first planets, the individualized planets, which help us become more ourselves. So all of the planets up to Saturn, in a way, can be seen as part of the sun, because there's a spectrum of different colors, different sides to the nature. And so the Venus side is our personal aesthetic. And when we tune into it, it gives us a thrill. It gives us an idea of our own qualities, if you like. And that is purely through the beautiful, what we find attractive in other people, what our tastes are. And in erotic love, as I say, we project the imagination, we project something onto it, because this is in a way a fulfillment of something which we're innately sensing in ourselves. Do you see what I mean? So, I don't want to get too personal, but you know, you've got to have this type of position or this type of thing said to you or whatever it is. You know, Venus in Gemini, you know, is a classic. They'll read all the sex manuals first in order to inform them. They need to be spoken with. There needs to be a kind of evocative conversation. Yes. And if it's in Cancer, the person needs to be cared for. It's connected. Caring, it gets connected with the act of love or sexuality. And Venus is in Aries, you know, it's like this need to have a kind of conquering endeavor. They need to be either wooed or pursued, or there is a kind of erotic force seeking to make life exciting. Do you see that? So the sign blends with the planet. If you could see it simply, that the sign tells you how the planet gets what it needs, what's attracted to. Do you see? So, and there's also kind of shadow sides to it. You know, if I mean, there's the Marilyn Monroe's Venus in Aries. I mean, she was out there, you know, saying, what do you think to me? What do you think to this? What about my, you know, there was a kind of erotic presentation of the self. Mind you, she had Neptune in the first house. So she was a kind of, anybody could project all kinds of erotic things onto her, men and women alike, you know. So there's those kind of things that I would be thinking about when I'm looking at Venus. What is it attempting to give you? Yeah, if you are, there's another side of Venus, of course, which is social. That's the kind of Libran side. What you know, a sense of balance, a sense of music, a sense of a romantic endeavor. So the ideal of a relationship gets projected onto the sexuality of Venus is in Libra, or if it's in Aquarius, there's the ideal person. It somehow has to fit in with a philosophy. Or Venus in Sagittarius, you know, have affairs in other countries. You know, that's a basic interpretation, but it means that, you know, the word erotic actually means foreign. It's something, but it's not foreign to you. When there's a fit, as it were, it brings you alive, but it's only done through relating.
I think
yes?
that's
the thing. I think the moon begins relating, but it's basically, am I safe and am I not safe? Is this supportive? Is this caring? Is this feeding me? Which is interesting when we get to aspects, because let's say the moon is in connection with Venus in aspects. What they're getting from an erotic relationship is also feeding their soul. They feel safe, they feel nurtured. But if Venus is in conjunction with Mars, it can be a conquering, it can be an excitement, it can be a fulfilling of the personality, a kind of erotic endeavor, if you like, for its own excitement. Do you see what I mean? So anyway, I'm just giving you a rough idea about how I would go about aspects and
of course
Venus inside.
The thing to remember, I think, as a starting point, which you touched on, is that all of these planets are linked with the sun, and so these personal planets are linked with the sun, so they are an expression of us. And I think with Venus, what she's also showing in the chart is how we learn about ourselves through others. And you were talking about us, you know, projecting onto other people things that we expect, a bit of a fantasy, but equally we are the recipients of projections. And in as much as we can learn about ourselves by considering what it is that we value and what we like in another person, equally it's interesting to see what other people value in us.
Yes.
So we're always learning about ourselves by looking at ourselves through others too. And that's a very, this is why Venus does get complicated, because it is about all of these different aspects of how we relate to each other.
Yeah, yes, I agree with that. I have in lectures in past, I may even do it in this one, to seen Venus as a kind of feeling erotic Mercury. There's a communication aspect to Venus. there's a give and receive aspect to it. So when you say learning about, so well, we can learn about ourselves in books, we can learn ourselves from information, we can learn about life by reading, but the particular form of learning with Venus, as I say, is erotic stimulation. It is the sharing of a piece of music together. You know, when I mean, you know, I have Venus square Uranus, and it's in Taurus, right? And I only learned about 10 years ago that I was a musician, a professional player and composer for many years, 20 years at least. I've been playing since 8, and I went to college and so on, and I've toured and bits and pieces. And really what attracted me to it was the spontaneity, you see. So I was an improviser. Well, I am an improviser, I still play. Do you see what I mean? So it's like there's an excitement coming through that Venus, which is visceral, very Taurian with me. So when I play, it's like, if I get it right, or if I listen to a piece of music, that can become, as I say, very sensate. But then with another person, there needs to be a kind of fit with my mind as well. I of course, there are lots of people you find attractive, but attraction to me is more than the physical expression. There's a Uranian quality, a kind of an outer world quality that attracts me to people. I'm talking about myself because it's you know, I'd like to encourage people in a way to allow themselves to discuss this rather intimate part that the people in generally conceal. You know, Venus Saturn has a bad press because they often feel they're not valued. And people are always criticizing them or something, or they think it's out there, but you know, there's an endeavor, if you like, to curtail sometimes the Venusian force. If it's Pluto, there's often an obsession. People don't like to admit they can get erotically addicted or obsessive. You know, all of those kinds of things. So these gives us the astrological placement gives us some themes to work with. And I do agree with you. It is about communication and learning about it, but it's through the aesthetic form. Whereas Mercury is through the you know, the informational form, and Mars is through the assertion of the individual, and that gets them going. As long as they have a victory, then Mars feels it's done its business.
Sometimes when I'm teaching new students, there seems to be some confusion about the fact that this is Venus, and what do we do with men? You know, what about Venus in men's charts? Perhaps you could say a little bit about that.
Well, there used to be, it's a hangover from traditional astrology into the classification of planets as male or female. But I think we've gone beyond that now. Although the phallic symbol of Mars with its arrow and that it was used by biology, as you know, to demarcate masculine and feminine, it really is a type of force that used to be embodied much more by men in society. You know, men have better upper body strength and so on. They have a particular kind of genitals. Do you see what I mean? So there's this embodiment of Mars. Things are changing, I think, though, in identity. So I don't think we can project just Mars onto men and so on. So Mars for me is the way a person asserts their individual will. And Venus, whether it's on a male or a female chart, relates to their ideal aesthetic. And when they find that in a partner, they found something in themselves which will make them whole.
Indeed. And I think it's also useful for people to remember that we're talking about yin yang energy, which exists within every individual, irrespective of what their sex might be. Yeah. So I think this is the best way to think of it. Venus exists in all of us because the impulse for relationship exists in all of us. and the sense of attraction and beauty exists in all of us, as does the fact that we all have some gifts to share with the world.
Yeah.
So this is what Venus is about, and that's very important in all of us.
Oh, absolutely. And although we're not going to do the variations of Venus on a kind of social line, as I say, art, music. I mean, I have Venus in the 9th house, right? I find astrology very beautiful. I find the planetary system very beautiful. I was attracted to it, so that you can see it through the house, is the activities, and it's a Venusian quality for me. I find, as I say, you know, the design of the chart, I used to always have to draw them out by hand. You know what I mean? There was something attractive in doing that. So there's a design component, a manner, you know, manners, morals, the way of being in the world. But we're more talking about the relational element in our particular talk.
Yes,
you know, with the lodge. So it is to do with that. It is to do with finding beauty.
yes.
And James Hillman has a lot to say about that, you know, about the West, that we hope to find meaning in a way just through intellectual concepts and all that, and have lost the value of simple beauty, the sunset. Libra is the sunset, isn't it? You know, the sun going down. If you look at the symbol, you know, it's the sun going down to the sea, and then you can see all the colors reflected just before the sunset, and it's way over there, and it brings you into a relationship with the other half. See, so this is again what Venus is doing in a more spiritual sense, is teaching us a balance of yin and yang energies.
Absolutely. I was just smiling listening to you talk about your love of drawing the charts. So
Yeah.
I also got Venus in Taurus in the 9th house, and it was I have.
Oh, you have that, do you?
Yes, and I have no time to draw charts by hand, but I used to love it, and always, you know, I would have beautiful colors, and it was always about making it a work of art. So yes, indeed, that's something that we have in common.
Yes, so, you know, in classical astrology, it would mean that you are attracted to, somehow you'll probably find your partner or several partners on the road. It's a bit of a gypsy house, that. And I don't mean anything bad by that. I mean the Romanies, roaming around. It's like Venus is never in one place, attracted to the erotic, the overseas. You know, the person, I've seen so many people with Venus in the 9th house go on the kind of ashram path, you know, when they're younger, and they're seeking, and they're going, and they have affairs on the way. You know, there's something about Venus as a pilgrimage in you know, so it's not one partner, yes, but it's the one's love is not related just to a single partner, let's say, I'll put it that way.
Well, I think actually the way it played out for me,
yeah,
was as a little girl, loving hearing other languages, and that was utterly wonderful to me. And I can remember going to the airport once or twice to collect family members or bring them to the airport, and I would sit there listening to all the different languages that were being spoken, and I absolutely loved it. That was beginning of my love affair with languages. So this is very much also what we're talking about, is this love, what we love, Venus showing us what we love.
Yes, and so therefore, if we take Venus in the Jungian sense as the anima or even the animus image, there are different layers of that. One is erotic, love and so on. But later on, there's a more spiritual kind of affection. Do you see what I mean? So these things get differentiated with maturity.
Indeed, exactly.
But
Well,
I don't think there's been books written on it yet. But I think it slightly changes. You see, because for a 5-year-old, it's not really to do with erotic love, but it is to do with what colors they choose with their crayons. It's if Venus is in relation to Neptune, the imaginal world of music and film and dancing, you can see a lot of people putting things on and changing and being drawn and attracted to the stage. Let's say if it's in the 5th, there's those kind of things, and then eventually when puberty comes, then it gets eroticized. But then later on, when you've, let's say, done enough of that, Venus then goes on to another level of a higher appreciation of poetry. Do you see, which is a relation of the soul to a different world. So you get that intermediary aspect of Venus as moving what moves you on. And if it's connected to the 9th, as I say, it's often through philosophy or religion or even divination and astrology, and that can lead the soul to something else because it excites you. There's a partner in astrology. Do you see? There's an intelligence there. So Venus can take a higher octave, but what we're looking at is, as I say, the relational element in a personal situation, I think.
And that is exactly the focus of the seminar. So this is on the 9th of April. It's online and it's with the Astrology Lodge of London.
Astrology Lodge of London, the oldest astrology club, wrong thing, astrology place in the world, as a society.
And so if you are interested, I will be putting a link to the lodge's website on the description box. And Richard, if people wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
Through the LSA, the London School of Astrology. I have yet to put my website up. I've been delaying it. I have a YouTube channel, which is just me, Richard Swatton. They can see lots of videos on there. I haven't been on there for a year because I got the cough and everything else, and I had to kind of go offline for a little while. But yes, through the London School of Astrology, or even via you. But I wouldn't want to put, I wouldn't want to make you a channel, as it were. But I don't have a website presence, and it's something I'm faulty at. What about you? Have you got one, Anna?
I do indeed. Yes.
Yeah, it's the best way these days, but I'm a little behind the times.
Well, that's all right, because I'm sure that people will find you through the London School of Astrology. Richard, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
That's okay. It's been very enjoyable to just to talk astrology generally.
It's always enjoyable to talk astrology, and it should be always enjoyable to watch anything to do with astrology. And so I want to thank all our viewers for joining us today. And next time we're going to be looking at relationships and sexuality. Have a great week. Until then, goodbye.
Cheerio.